Hey everyone, it's ENDYMION, and I got more insider information surrounding BioWare and Dragon Age. And then there's an industry critic who is trying to claim that the hate towards DEI is unfounded and that we are all to blame and much more. So we'll get through the Dragon Age stuff first, then we're going to war with games journalists. So let's just get into it. Firstly, I got more information exclusively from one of my sources about the actual sales numbers currently for Veilguard. As we know, the game hasn't broke even 100,000 concurrent players on Steam. It's very unlikely this is ever going to happen now going forward. As of the making of this video, Veilguard has a concurrent player count of around 32,000 players on Steam, or about half of what Baldur's Gate 3 is currently pulling in on Steam alone. So let's now get into this insider information that I have. This source is my same source for Dragon Age, Assassin's Creed, Dune Awakening, and CD Projekt Red. They've been pretty bang on for the most part, so I trust them when it comes to this information. Firstly, let's go over the budget of Veilguard. As I'm told, the total budget for this game over its 9-year dev cycle at least is sitting at the $200 to $300 million range allegedly. So let's say in terms of units sold for BioWare to break even just on development costs for Veilguard, they would roughly need to sell about 5 million copies in total for this game to break even. Not make a profit, by the way, just even. This places Veilguard in the same range, if not more dev cost wise, to something like Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, which we know lost around $200 million for Warner Bros. Already, but there's more to this scoop I got, so let's continue. Next, I was told that the marketing budget for Veilguard was lower than usual from EA, mostly because Electronic Arts was not confident that this game would sell well at all and saw the game as a loss prior to release. Which makes sense since from what I'm told the game barely had 100,000 pre-orders prior to launch. Which for a game with this much expectations behind it and a whole decade pretty much between releases, this should have shot into the stratosphere. But it didn't, of course, and EA pretty much gave Veilguard the bare minimum, and then they moved on to their more lucrative franchises within their sports sector, which makes them billions annually. As I'm told, development for this game started somewhere around 2015, the next year following the release of Inquisition. But it didn't really get kicked into high gear until much later on, of course, since BioWare was instead focusing on Anthem at the time, which, well, we all know how that turned out. As I'm told, development restarted 3 to 4 times since the start of this game's inception, each time with new writers and leads trying to conceptualize what exactly was going to be the future of Dragon Age. The original pitch for this game was what we actually wanted from it, which was going to be the player character chasing Solus across Tevinter to stop him. The game originally, as I was told, was supposed to harken back to Origins and Dragon Age 2 even by focusing the entire game's plot, story, and locations within the Tevinter Imperium specifically, much like how Dragon Age 2 was set within Kirkwall exclusively. The main focus here was to broaden the reach of Dragon Age's depiction of mages and the magic within Tevinter, which makes total sense to me considering the Tevinter Imperium is where the Magisters originated from. They were the main users of magic within mankind, and those Magisters led to the opening of the Golden City. And of course, those Magisters became the first Darkspawn, and the rest is history. There's a lot of lore rich to sink your teeth into within Tevinter alone, but this was scrapped, and of course, now that I've 100%ed the game, you instead end up visiting smaller areas repeatedly within places like Arlington Forest, where the elves used to call home before Tevinter, well, nuked them pretty much. Or places like the Hossberg Wetlands, where the Grey Wardens are situated and so on. I think one location could have worked had BioWare just really focused in on it, because I believe that Minrathous, which is in Tevinter and it's where the game opens in Veilguard, is very easily one of the most captivating and visually striking locations in the game, and I mean it makes sense, since the entire ending missions and all of that happen in Minrathous for a reason, because it is objectively just great looking and really unique. I do wish we got more out of it, but we didn't. The story originally was going to be very politically driven, which sounded great to me too. And I mean, by politically driven, I mean within the politics that confine within Dragon Age's world, not the real world. Anyway, once the layoffs hit BioWare, 2023 came around, and then Mary Kirby left BioWare as well. Kirby, if you don't know, she was the one who came up with characters like Varric and the Kunari race, so this is someone you didn't want to lose, but BioWare did. The budget also ballooned to what I told you already, and the rumor my source heard was that Mary Kirby was pretty much pushed out of BioWare for not agreeing with the game's narrative direction, although who knows if Kirby will deny that or not in public, because if they did, it would probably end the relationship between them and BioWare for good, if there even is one right now to begin with. As for sales numbers, what I was told as of right now on November 12th, 2024, which is when I'm writing this video, the current sales figure for Veilguard is 615,000 units sold. However, I do want to make sure that everyone knows this too. This 615,000 units is the total sold across everything before refunds have been taken into account. So the actual number of people who own the game currently and are playing it is far lower than this 615,000 number. As I told you before, over 30,000 people have refunded the game about half a week ago already. That Park Place also had an article recently about their own insider source about this too. They were told by someone who works in a retail store chain within America that within this 7-store chain, that around 75% of the sales of this game were refunded already. So yeah, it's not looking good at all. My source also told me Dragon Age is officially on ice for the foreseeable future, and no further content will be made for it beyond what has either already been greenlit already, but game-wise, it's doubtful anything does end up happening. But it's sad we had a potential Dragon Age 4 harkening back to Origins in terms of tone, and the developers there went, nah, let's make a game where we don't give players anything that they want. But that's what I got for you today on Dragon Age. The game is not doing well at all, it has mass amounts of refunds, and it's a total mess. It's a miracle the game even came out, all things considered, but sadly what we got here is not what we wanted. Now, let's move on to this other story that is completely not Dragon Age related at all. Well, yeah, no it isn't. But I think more people should see it because it kind of proves how out of touch the losing side really is these days. So Kinda Funny exists still, which is already unfortunate because they are a relic of the game's media even though they haven't existed as long as other news outlets. I've spoken before on this channel on how Kinda Funny is just your typical yes men group that never says anything critical about the games industry. Because at the heart of Kinda Funny, they are simply a group of people who were raised and conditioned by the very dying games media that they now replicate in return. They're all games journalists, pretty much, which already means what they think should never be taken as gospel for, well, obvious reasons. They're never going to tell you about the agendas of devs or companies because they will lose access to the games that they never buy if they were to do that. So naturally, they will instead ignore any of the problems that players actually have with games because they are in bed with many of these games companies. Ask yourselves why some channels with much larger followings can't secure review codes for upcoming games. Yet places like Kinda Funny, which averages very low in views per video based on their size, always do get codes instead. Wouldn't it make more sense to give these codes to people who can reach a much wider audience? Well, yes, but actually no. Because Kinda Funny will parrot and enforce the ideas that these games want to be said, whereas these independent creators out there with a big following will probably not do that. And therefore, like always, the industry engine continues to churn, spewing out more and more slop by people that nobody listens to. That is what Kinda Funny is in the end, an aging relic of another relic that is mad that they are no longer the voice of the people. So this brings us to one of the people at Kinda Funny that I publicly push back against whenever he speaks out against me or others. That person is Andy Cortez. Don't harass this guy, just let me speak here and we can analyze what he has to say. Andy hates people like me because I and others make his job and content obsolete because he's never going to actually tell you the inner workings of games. He will always skim over all of it, ensuring that he doesn't do anything that will cut off his free access to video games. He will also gaslight people into believing that following or listening to YouTubers that are outside of his sphere of friends is bad to do. He said this back in July, which got picked up again recently by others on Twitter. Then we'll go into a video clip later on to show you more about this. Firstly, Andy said, if you're angry at the games industry for being too woke, I think you're a dummy. If you then fall for the right-wing grift and allow someone to profit off of your anger, the grifter thinks you're a dummy too. Don't be a dummy. Andy is very unapologetically left-leaning like much of the games media is because they are anything besides what the echo chamber allows. They get excommunicated and then thrown out into the cold because they claim that they're diverse and that they embrace different ways of thinking, but that's a lie and we all know it. They instead villainize and attack anyone who leans anywhere outside of left-leaning, claiming that anyone who believes in anything conservative, for example, should just be considered awful and racist. Of course, the election just happened, as I definitely know you know. And we all saw that the overwhelming amount of Americans voted for Donald Trump over Kamala Harris. Currently, right now, the Republicans hold the most seats in government and have effectively completely swept the American political landscape to becoming the new overwhelming majority. The liberals have lost against Trump, and the red wave is a historic moment for the country, and faith and positivity, as you probably see on Twitter and YouTube, have been returned to America in kind. Of course, this pisses off these sorts of people like Andy or his daddy Greg Miller that he looks up to, usually from below. Even then, they refuse to believe that they lost in a fair election, which they did, by the way. It's not some conspiracy theory that every game that is woke is failing, and at the same time, the entirety of the political landscape of America shifts to one side of the aisle like this within a single year. Could it be that everyone who disagrees with you is racist and bigoted, or could it be that your side continues to fail when it comes to understanding what the average people of this world want and care about? It can't be that every single American who voted Trump is racist, since plenty of people from all walks of life did just that. The Latino community, which I assume Andy comes from, overwhelmingly voted for Trump as well. Does that make Andy's own people now somewhat racist too, or could it be that just maybe the world is tired and sick of the woke agenda and leftist liberal politics? Of course, Andy will never admit that his side is losing so laughably bad, because admission of defeat is worse than death in their eyes. They would rather drown in their own waste and urine than ever reach out for the helping hand of someone if they identify as Republican. The gaming industry is on fire for a lot of reasons. Yes, things cost too much. Yes, inflation is very high. Yes, the wrong kinds of games are being made, like live service, constantly. And why is it that the economy is so cooked these last few years? Alright, it's cause you had an old guy as president who didn't even know where he was 90% of the time, and that's being generous. All of your failures stem from the fact that your lack of leadership in government had a trickle-down effect that ruined the world for the worse in the past 4 years. Then in 2020, when ESG became more prominent, a lot of these companies went for the easy money from those ESG investments. And they were being told that they would get all this money, but all they had to do was hire people based off of DEI, or diversity, equity, and inclusion. And this has, as we all know, led to disastrous consequences across the board. Companies are closing down. So are websites, people are losing jobs, new wars started in those last 4 years. People can't afford groceries or rent properly anymore, and most are just one paycheck away from homelessness. And it's very clear that the liberal way of doing things, not just in games, but the world, is clearly not working for anyone. Continuing down this path of ruin would be nothing but leading to a world that will just fall apart in due time if those things continue to happen. But people like Andy, of course, don't see that, because to admit to this is to admit that they are wrong, and they, of course, cannot have that. Andy continued this way of thinking recently in a clip that was shared by him on his profile that shows himself saying that DEI is not killing games. To set this up real quick, unless Kinda Funny ends up copywriting this video due to this clip being included, which would then just prove they know they are lying and don't want to get caught up in the act, that if this clip gets removed from this very video, I will leave a link just in case in the description where you can watch this same clip on Twitter if you want to. So hopefully this clip is still in this video when you watch it. Anyways, here it is.
Because you wouldn't have jobs if DEI didn't exist to complain about. You wouldn't be making money on YouTube if DEI didn't exist. So you're really the ones that need it. Unless your game has only white dudes, if you have a woman, she better be fucking hot.
Yeah.
You know, get an ugly woman out of my game. That lady better be super smoking hot.
Yep.
That's the way they think, right? Back in the day, game development studios were primarily white dudes. And they didn't really think about diversity. And that's one thing, right? It was a lot rarer to find non-white dudes in game development. And as that changes, and as college and learning and all that stuff kind of becomes more ubiquitous and more available for everybody, more and more people from different walks of life want to get into game development.
Yeah.
And then what happens then?
They're making the characters the people that they know, the things that they see.
And it's
just like the white people do.
Just like you put yourself into stories, right?
Yeah.
And I talked about that with Dragon Age Veilguard, how the game director, Corinne Bush, she's a trans woman. And sometimes in games, you just put in your own sort of experiences. And that's so natural to happen.
That's what art is.
It's nothing that's supposed to offend anybody. It's supposed to be, hey, can walk around and look around. The world has everybody. Your game's having it shouldn't stop you from playing.
As you saw, Andy claims that DEI is not killing games and people like me would be out of a job without it. Which is hilarious because his entire job is kept alive and fed by the fact that these people who push DEI support him. So it's actually him who would lose a job, but I mean, again, Kinda Funny needs those endorsements by these types to exist. Looking at their main channel here, which, wow, I just noticed actually, I passed their main channel in subscribers. And by the way, I'm one guy in my bedroom with a laptop. Hey Andy, how does it feel to know that I'm doing better than all of you and your buddies combined? Probably not very good, huh? And y'all have been here for over 10 years now too. I've been doing YouTube full time for not even 2 years yet. But enough gloating. Anyway, look at their numbers, guys. Nobody is watching this stuff. It's like 5% of their audience actually engages with the content being made, maybe 10% at best at times. One of their only videos that crossed 100,000 views was actually from last year, which is when they did a spoiler cast for Spider-Man 2. So this entire year, they've been releasing just middling content that most people don't even want to engage with. So of course Andy is mad at people like me because his side is losing the plot and have completely become disconnected when trying to appease to the players at large. It's crazy to me that people like this actually believe that it's some grift that's destroying the industry. Even though I don't do sponsorships anymore. I haven't done one of those in like, what, over a year and a half now? Yet for any company paying Kinda Funny any amount of money to sponsor their videos has gotta be clinically insane at this point. If Kinda Funny is charging any company out there anything more than $5 for a sponsorship on videos that can barely break 10 or 20,000 views per upload on a channel that has 298,000 subscribers as of the making of this video, you are paying way too much money for what Kinda Funny is selling you, and no, I'm not sorry to point that out or say it, because they are grifting the industry into an echo chamber to give them money by supporting their dog water content that is literally just a bunch of guys sitting around agreeing with each other while offering nothing new to the industry or the conversation at large. And then you wonder why. Why do people like Asmongold, for example? Why does he thrive? They will say, oh, because he's negative. But the reality is because that guy at least will say things that the common industry people will never say because they're afraid of, again, losing access to things. That's all this is for these sorts of people. It's all about the access, getting invited to the Game Awards, getting their hotels paid for, getting free games, the swag bags. This legitimizes them because it's obviously their content not doing well and nobody cares about it, so they gotta hold on to something. Let me just give you some examples to show to you how their side of the aisle is dealing with the fact that all of their garbage opinions are being rejected completely and utterly, okay? Natalia here, for example, you may remember, she's the one who said that she was non-binary in order to get a code for Dragon Age. Yeah, she lied, and it worked, and then she played it early and then told everyone that it was awful, which yes, I can confirm that it is. So she replied to Andy Cortez and said that what Andy is proposing is moronic because what he's saying is that people should force themselves into games because those are their experiences. So we should let people who are one thing like black make only black games and then let white people make only white games. And then see which games sell better to let the market decide. He also openly said in that clip that Corinne Bush, the trans director of Veilguard, had to put people that were trans in the game because they're trans. That's a real thing that he said. He's insane, dude, but let's keep going.
Dragon Age Veilguard, how the game director, Corinne Bush, she's a trans woman. And sometimes in games, you just put in your own sort of experiences, and that's so natural to happen.
Don't ask questions. Just consume product and then get excited for next products.
Of course, this argument is ridiculous, but it's what Andy is coming to here. He's given the worst take on DEI imaginable. Claiming that games were predominantly white because of the devs that made it isn't true. Content has always been diverse. Let's look at Gears of War, for example, which came back way back in the day, and that had plenty of diversity in their cast despite the devs being primarily white. Or you know what? Let's go for something that attaches to something more new these days. Mass Effect was made by a BioWare that was unshackled by the confines of wokeness, and they made a game that had both strong women and men and plenty of diversity across the board. And actually, the only time BioWare started to noticeably remove white people from their games unless they were villains was actually when they made Veilguard specifically. But again, totally different people making that game from the people that made Mass Effect. And big surprise, and that of course didn't sell well at all. So Andy's horrendous take that people of whatever origin should push their ideology into games is proving that in real time, it doesn't work. Of course, people are going to defend him that think the same, like Machine Games, which made Wolfenstein, that recently posted after Trump won that killing Yahtzee should be a thing again. Wow, nice Machine Games. Very politically unbiased of you, except not at all. And of course, they're making that new Indiana Jones game that is being made for a modern audience, as that one person in the trailer which you have all seen and has been memed like crazy already, said so we know that Machine Games' stance already is very left-leaning, so no thanks, I'm good. These liberal types are now scraping the bottom of the barrel as well, looking for gotchas. For example, Paul Tassi wrote an article recently about how Elon Musk lost his top 20 place in Diablo 4. Okay? Tell me why this is news exactly. The guy runs multiple companies. It's a miracle at all that he has the time to be in the top 20 for any game, considering how much he works. But now that he's busier than ever, yeah, the guy is not going to keep his spot in a video game. Big shocker, I know, I guess. Like, this is what we're resorting to for news guys now? Really? Why not talk about how your woke game that you're gonna absolutely push for Game of the Year couldn't sell 1 million copies in 2 weeks? Or how about telling people how many companies refuse to hire people based on skin color instead of merit? Of course you won't, because it goes against your agenda, but here's a story on how Elon Musk, of all people, lost his place in Diablo. And then these people will try to say, oh, we welcome everyone, we don't discriminate or hold agendas. Of course, Kind of Funny recently also had a video for their podcast that is literally called, Please Vote for Kamala Harris. Yeah, no agenda at all to see here, boys, just keep it moving, no political leaning here at all. Then of course you could show the people who attack fellow YouTubers like Smash JT all the time. He got attacked recently by some Kotaku freaks and now Rolling Stone writers too. One Rolling Stone writer whose name is Chris Cruz, I don't know this guy, but he works there apparently. Anyway, he attacked Smash JT and said, LMAO, this dude doesn't have an industry, he doesn't make games, he's not a reporter, and doesn't have any access. He's nobody talking really loud to feel like a somebody. As you can notice on screen, the access part is circled red. This was done by Stuttering Craig of Side-Scrollers, who originally posted this, which is how I saw it. Craig even said in his reply here to Chris Cruz, access is what makes a reporter to this guy. When we say access media, we mean people like him. He's a joke and the reason nobody considers Rolling Stone relevant. And it's exactly that. They attack Smash JT simply because he is speaking to people and reaching them in ways that Rolling Stone or Kotaku or even Kind of Funny never could. And like I said before with Andy and the whole Kind of Funny thing, this Chris Cruz guy, he parrots it as well. All about access for these people. That's what they feel makes them legitimate when it comes to being real journalists. Notice how they never say that it's their opinions or the quality of their reporting. It's just access. Because the quality of their reporting is obvious to anyone who's read anything these shows have made before, which is that it's awful. It's biased, and this Chris Cruz of Rolling Stone is just angry that Smash JT, a married father of 2 kids, is beating his publication without the help of an entire editorial team like Chris Cruz has regular access to. Pun definitely intended, by the way. And frankly, that's what a lot of this comes down to for me anyway, is that it's a bunch of legacy media types that are losing their minds that they can no longer connect with the common player or reader anymore. Because nobody values what these people have to say, because what they do say is unanimously pointless and lacks any meaning at all. If it were up to these types, the Andy Cortezes, the Paul Tassis, or Chris Cruzes, you would never see change in the industry or the world at large. The only change would be that the parasitic relationships these types have with the companies they leech onto would continue. Sort of like a bug that is sucking nutrients from an animal, hoping that it doesn't notice. The world would just simply continue to fall further into chaos. The experiences that you love would then become more disconnected from what you crave these days. And the messages would be turning from heroism and self-individuality into just a mess of self-hatred and rejection of morals. They want you to be just as miserable as they are when it comes to these things. There's a reason why they push against people who fight the agenda or this DEI stuff. It's a net positive for the industry for things like DEI to die because it would mean better products get made in the future. But let's be real, they don't want better products anymore. They just want their messages to take precedence over everything else. It's no longer about entertainment or the quality of the experience for you who has to pay for these things. It's just to ensure that no matter where you go, what you play, you will always circle back to the agenda. Like a labyrinth with no exit, where the entrance was lost to you ages ago, you are endlessly running through tunnels of darkness, hoping to finally find your way out when the true escape is to stop looking forward but instead up. only to see the sadistic eyes of those who placed you there to begin with enjoying as you suffer to escape their design. I reject what these people propose. I reject their morals, and I loathe that they believe they should become the only people that are allowed to speak their minds. They are all pro-censorship, they are pro-war, they are pro-inflation, and anti-human in every regard. After all, Kinda Funny really wanted you to vote for Kamala Harris so badly that they spoke about it for 2 hours and then some to change your mind. And they're realizing that in their efforts that they lost, and that their influence is worth less than a used copy of Dragon Age Veilguard at this point. Their commitments to the DEI overlords have led to nothing but the chasm between them and the audience growing ever longer and deeper with every single passing day. Their numbers prove this. And they will never admit that they're wrong, so instead it falls to people like me to just tell you how it is. I want you to just think how you want, be your own person, buy the games you think that you want to see more of. But I implore you, dear viewer, to remember that all of these game media types like Andy Cortez would rather you live under their boot than stand shoulder to shoulder with them ever. And he's not angry that we're doing better than him. He's more angry that he can't stop us, and he wishes that we would all die so that he can continue to push his mediocrity in peace. But I reject that. I reject Kinda Funny. They are a terrible, pro-woke, anti-true gaming channel. And I will never not think that. They threw Colin Moriarty to the wolves, not because they didn't love Colin, but because they simply loved their access to free media and hotels more than Colin's own existence within that space. Let that realization sink into you, friends. These are who these people are. And can I just say that I am so happy that this has led to where we are now. So let's keep changing things. Let's keep making gaming great again, and let's continue until eventually one day people like Andy Cortez will have no influence at all. And dear Andy Cortez, from the bottom of my heart, just put the fries in the bag, bro. Thank you for watching, subscribe, let me know what you think as always, thanks to my supporters, and I'll see you guys in the next one.